The storm had no mercy that night. The sky was swallowed in a deep grey, snow slicing sideways in sheets across the windshield. Emily gripped the steering wheel tighter as her little sedan trembled beneath her. Headlights barely pierced the white. Chaos ahead. The road was unfamiliar, narrow country pass, flanked by frozen cornfields and skeletal trees, bending in protest against the wind. Then it happened. Her tires jerked without warning. Black ice, slick, invisible, and sudden. The car spun once, then again as panic surged through her chest. Emily yanked the wheel, but it was useless. She was a passenger now, her breath caught in her throat. With a final shudder, the sedan skidded into a snowbank, the engine sputtering. She was alone. The impact hadn't hurt her, but the silence that followed did. Steam billowed from under the crumpled hood, disappearing into the cold night like a ghost. Emily sat still, her hands trembling against the wheel. Her breath fogged the cracked glass. No headlights in either direction. No movement, just snow, hissing against metal. Then a sound, not wind, not the engine, something else. A bark, sharp, not frantic, not distant. It sliced through the cold like an alarm bell, 3 short bursts, then silence. Emily blinked, straining to hear again. Another bark, louder this time. Closer, she leaned forward, her breath catching. It wasn't just a dog barking, it felt purposeful, like someone trying to get her attention. Someone, or something. The hair on the back of her neck rose. Against every rule of logic and safety, Emily opened the door. A burst of frigid air hit her like a wall. She tucked her scarf tighter, then stepped out. Her boots sank deep into untouched snow, and for a moment she hesitated, but something pulled at her. Not just curiosity, something deeper, urgent, personal. She followed the sound through the swirling snow. Emily saw it. A large German shepherd stood just beyond the edge of the road, half shadowed by the storm's haze. The barking had stopped. The dog didn't move. It simply stared, not in fear, not in aggression, in knowing its fur was thick, rimmed with ice. Ears tall, body still. It didn't retreat when she stepped closer. It didn't approach either. It just waited. Emily's steps slowed as she met its gaze. The dog didn't flinch. Its eyes were dark, deep too knowing for comfort. Not wild, not lost, but searching. There was something behind those eyes. Not just intelligence, something older, heavier, like it had come for her, like it had waited. She took one more step, and the shepherd turned slowly, walking into the snow, then pausing just long enough to be followed. Emily felt it in her chest. This wasn't random, this was a summons, and she had no choice but to answer it. Emily's steps crunched softly in the snow as she edged closer, breath visible in the icy air. The German shepherd shifted, stepping aside deliberately. It wasn't retreat or fear. There was a quiet confidence in its stance, a silent invitation. Its deep, steady eyes locked onto hers, not once wavering. The dog seemed to be leading her somewhere, as if guarding a fragile secret buried beneath the frozen white. Emily's heart pounded with a mix of curiosity and dread. Was this an act of trust, or a plea for help? Whatever it was, the moment felt sacred, as if fate had drawn them together in this frozen wilderness. Kneeling slowly, Emily's fingers trembled as she brushed aside the snow's icy veil. There, pressed against the earth, lay the tiny bundle wrapped in a ragged, threadbare blanket stained with dirt and frost. The baby's face was pale, almost ghostly in the pale light, eyes closed, chest barely rising with fragile breaths. An unbearable hush filled the air, thick with the weight of silence. Time seemed to freeze around her, and Emily's breath hitched. How could anyone abandon something so helpless in this cruel storm? The urgency of the moment slammed into her. Like a wave she had to act, and fast, before the cold stole this fragile life forever. Her hands, numb and shaking, slipped beneath the thin fabric, searching desperately for signs of life. Then there it was, a faint, fluttering pulse beneath her fingertips. The baby's heart, weak but steady, sparked a fragile hope in Emily's chest. She pressed her ear close, straining against the silence, and suddenly a tiny, cracked cry escaped the infant's lips, a sound so small, yet bursting with raw, desperate life. Tears blurred Emily's vision. The sound was fragile, but it was enough. It was a lifeline. Instincts awakened deep within her. Nurse, protector, savior. She whispered softly, "You're not alone anymore. I'm here." From the edge of the clearing, the German shepherd moved forward cautiously, its warm breath steaming in the cold air. The dog's eyes shone with quiet understanding, filled with a fierce loyalty that made Emily's heart ache. It nudged the baby gently with its nose, then licked the child's cheek tenderly. No aggression, no fear, only soft, careful affection. It was clear this dog was no stranger to sacrifice. It had been the guardian of this fragile life, standing vigil against the unforgiving storm. Emily felt a swell of gratitude mixed with sorrow. In that moment, the unspoken bond between them stretched taut, bond forged in trust and silent promises. Her eyes swept the endless white landscape footprints, fading into nothing, no signs of other souls or shelter. The wind's howl swallowed all hope of rescue. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the chilling truth settled over her. This child was alone, completely alone except for the dog. No traces of a parent, no messages, no signs of mercy or explanation. Questions clawed at her mind. Why here? Why now? Who could abandon such innocence to the merciless cold? The silence around her was deafening, pressing against her heart like an unbearable weight. But the choice was clear. She could not leave this child to the storm. With urgency sparked by fear and hope intertwined, Emily carefully lifted the fragile bundle. She wrapped her thick coat tighter around the baby, feeling the faint warmth against her chest, a fragile flame against the biting cold. Each breath she took was shallow, hurried time slipping away like the snowflakes melting on her skin. She glanced once more at the loyal dog standing watch, then turned and began the painful, slippery journey back to the stalled car. Her heart hammered not only for the child's survival but for the silent companion left behind. She whispered, "Hold on, we'll get through this." Emily's footsteps faded into the storm's howl, but she could feel the dog's gaze burning into her back. The German shepherd sat motionless, a steadfast sentinel carved from the snow itself. Its eyes held 1,000 silent stories, please. For safety, an unbreakable promise to protect, and a quiet sorrow that only a guardian could bear. It didn't follow her, it didn't flee. It simply watched loyal to the end, guarding the place where its charge had been left behind. Emily's chest tightened. The bond was unspoken but profound. She owed this dog everything. And yet, she had to leave. The car door loomed before her like a barrier between hope and heartbreak. Her hand hovered on the handle, fingers trembling not from cold, but from the ache inside. To save the baby, she must leave the dog behind in the storm's cruel grip. To turn back would mean risking both their lives. Tears burned her eyes as she swallowed the bitter weight of this impossible choice. "I promise I'll come back," she whispered fiercely, more to herself than to the dog. The storm was relentless, the night unforgiving, but a bond had been forged, one of trust, sacrifice, and love that neither time nor distance could ever break. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beep of the monitors. Emily stood just outside the glass crib, her palm cold against the smooth surface, as she watched the fragile life inside. The baby's chest rose and fell in a gentle, steady rhythm, a small miracle after the chaos of that frozen night. Relief washed over Emily, but beneath it lay a current of unanswered questions that tugged at her heart. Who had left this tiny, helpless soul alone in the snow, and why? She felt both grateful and haunted, caught between the joy of survival and the weight of mystery. The sterile hospital corridors echoed with footsteps, but none belonged to a family looking for the baby. Emily found herself visiting every day, hoping for a breakthrough, a clue, a name whispered in the quiet. Yet nothing came, no visitors, no call, just endless silence. The absence gnawed at her. This child had no past, no one to call family. Slowly, a deep sense of responsibility settled into Emily's bones. This baby, so fragile and alone, had become hers to protect. She couldn't turn away, not now. Returning to the trail where it all began, Emily moved cautiously through the thickening dusk. The forest around her seemed hushed, almost watching. Then, just beyond the edge of the clearing, a large shape emerged, a German shepherd, steady and calm, eyes locked on hers. It was a ranger. The dog had waited, as if guarding something sacred, silently reminding her that their story was far from over. In that quiet moment, a bridge between their worlds was quietly rebuilt. The dog's gaze never wavered as Emily lowered herself to the ground, her hand trembling slightly as she set down a small bowl of food. No sudden moves, no hurried words, just patient stillness. She held her breath, hoping the fragile trust they'd begun to form wouldn't shatter now. Ranger took a slow step forward, sniffed the food, and then ate with careful, respectful pauses. It was a quiet invitation, a fragile bond beginning to mend through the simple act of breaking bread together. Emily's voice was barely more than a breath, yet it carried the weight of everything she felt. "You saved her." Those words hung between them, honest and raw. For the first time, Ranger's eyes met hers, steady and unblinking. No fear, no doubt, just a deep, unspoken understanding passed between them, moment where gratitude, respect, and something like affection began to weave their silent dialogue. In that gaze, Emily felt the flicker of a connection that might heal them both. A small smile broke through Emily's guarded expression as she reached out a hand, letting the name slip gently into the evening air. Ranger, it fits the steadfast guardian, the loyal watcher. Naming him was more than just a word, it was a promise, a way to bridge the distance between stranger and companion. Ranger seemed to accept it, a subtle nod of his head, as if recognizing the first step in their journey together. Days later, Emily found herself on a quiet bench near the edge of the woods, Ranger settling beside her like an old friend. Neither spoke. The stillness between them was filled with everything that words could never capture: the comfort of shared solitude, the gentle assurance of presence. It was in these peaceful moments, side by side under a sky slowly turning gold, that their bond deepened. Trust blossomed not from grand gestures, but from simply being there, together. The walls Emily had built around her heart began to crumble. With tears she hadn't known she carried, She shared her past, the losses, the loneliness, the fears. Words poured out, raw and trembling, as Ranger listened with quiet, unwavering loyalty. He didn't move or judge. He just stayed, his warm body close, a steady anchor in the storm of her emotions. In that moment, Emily found a silent companion who understood pain and offered healing simply by being present. A fierce storm trapped Emily inside her small home. The cold pushed against every window pane, the wind a relentless force that shook the house. Just when the silence felt thick enough to suffocate, a sudden bark shattered the stillness. It was Ranger calling out, refusing to be left behind. Emily's heart leaped, both startled and comforted. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. The door creaked open, cold air rushing in behind her as Ranger crossed the threshold. There was no hesitation, no second thoughts, just a steady step forward, a silent claim of belonging. Emily watched him, breath-catching. The invisible barrier between their worlds dissolved as Ranger entered her home, the first time she truly felt that. She had gained a friend, a protector, someone who was no longer outside looking in. As the flames flickered softly in the hearth, Emily sank into a worn armchair, pulling a thick blanket tight around her shoulders. Ranger settled at her feet, curling close like he belonged there. The quiet warmth between them was more than physical. It was the birth of something profound. In that silence, words were unnecessary. Their bond, forged in hardship and healing, settled deep into their souls. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt whole. The evening had folded into quiet shadows, the fading light brushing the sky in cold shades of purple and grey. Emily stood by the window, the calm stillness of her small home wrapping around her like a fragile shield. Then the sudden rumble of an engine sliced through the silence. A dark SUV glided up the gravel driveway, its headlights low and ominous. The vehicle's presence felt like a ripple of unease, an unspoken threat whispered in the fading dusk. Emily's breath caught. Something about the way it arrived was more than just a casual visit. The hum of that engine was a warning something was coming, and her world was about to shift again. The doorbell echoed sharply through the stillness. Emily's hand trembled slightly as she opened the door. Standing there was a man in a crisp uniform, the badge gleaming coldly under the porch light. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, swept over her home with the cool efficiency of someone who'd seen too much. He spoke with a voice measured, his tone leaving little room for question. "I'm with Animal Control," he said, stepping onto the porch without waiting for an invitation. There was an edge to his words, a certainty that unsettled Emily more than she could explain. The way he looked at her, as if she was part of something she didn't yet understand, made the air between them taut with unspoken tension. Emily's heart stumbled as the man's voice grew heavier with truth she hadn't expected. "The dog you call Ranger," he began carefully. "His real name is Coda. He was part of an elite police unit, deployed on dangerous missions. Officially, he died in action during a raid 2 years ago." The words hit Emily like a cold wave. Suddenly, the dog she'd come to know as a loyal companion was revealed as something more, a hero with a past buried in shadows and silence. The man's eyes held a mixture of regret and duty, as if this revelation was both a closure and a new beginning she wasn't prepared for. For a moment, Emily's mind raced, trying to reconcile the dog by her side with the legend the stranger spoke of. "No," Emily said quietly, her fingers tightening around Ranger's collar as the dog pressed close beside her, sensing her resolve. He's not Coda to me. He's a ranger, the dog who saved a baby, who chose to stay with me. You can't take him." Her voice, though soft, held an unshakable strength. This was no longer just about a dog or a past life, which was about the family they had formed, the silent promise of loyalty that had grown through every shared moment. The man hesitated, sensing the steel in her eyes, the fierce protection that no official paper could undo. Emily stood tall, ready to fight for the bond that had become her lifeline. Ranger's growl was low, a rumble born from ancient instincts, sharpened by years of service and survival. His dark eyes locked onto the stranger's with unwavering intensity, a warning that this was no ordinary dog, and this was no ordinary fight. His muscles tensed, every movement deliberate, radiating a protective fire that filled the space between man and woman. Emily felt the weight of that growl in her chest, raw, living testament to the bond they shared. In that moment, Ranger was not just a dog, but a guardian, silently vowing to defend their fragile peace at any cost. The stillness of the night shattered with the sharp crash of breaking glass. Emily's eyes flew open to darkness pierced by the jagged sounds of intrusion. Panic surged through her veins as footsteps echoed in the hallway. Presence unwelcome, dangerous, unknown. The warmth of the fire faded under the cold threat that had invaded her sanctuary. Ranger was instantly alert, ears pricked, muscles coiled. The quiet home transformed into a battlefield, the shadows harboring a sinister force that threatened everything she held dear. Fear gripped Emily's heart, but beneath it, a fierce flame of resolve blazed. She would not be powerless tonight. Without hesitation, Ranger sprang forward, a force of nature honed by years of training and love. His teeth snapped, a blur of motion and sound that froze the intruder's breath in his throat. The masked man stumbled back, eyes wild with panic as the dog's relentless defense left no room for doubt. A final, desperate glance, and the attacker fled into the night, swallowed by the falling snow and the unforgiving cold. Ranger stood guard at Emily's side, chest heaving, every nerve alive with protective loyalty. In that moment, his past and present collided. He was still a warrior, still a protector, still the steadfast friend Emily had come to rely on. The flashing blue lights bathed the yard in eerie colors as police officers swarmed the scene, their questions urgent, their eyes sharp for answers. Tracks in the snow told a story, a trail leading away from the shattered window, toward a dark past neither Emily nor Ranger had fully understood. Among the scattered debris, investigators found pieces that hinted at a larger mystery: the babies, abandonment, Ranger's disappearance, and now this violent intrusion, all threads woven into a tangled web of danger and deceit. Emily watched silently, the weight of realization pressing down on her. This was no random act, but a reckoning that had found her doorstep in the quiet aftermath. Emily knelt beside the dog whose eyes mirrored the storm they had weathered together. Her voice softened to a tender whisper, a confession meant only for him. "You were never lost," she said, brushing a hand gently through his thick fur. "You were always searching for justice, for safety, for a way back home." Ranger's gaze met hers, calm and steady, as if understanding every word without the need for sound. Between them, a silent acknowledgement bloomed, a recognition of the journey that had brought them here. To this moment of healing and hope, Emily rose slowly, her eyes tracing the silhouette of the dog who had been many things: a soldier, a savior, a stranger, and now family. She understood at last that Coda had never truly vanished from the world. His mission had never ended. It had simply evolved, taking new shape in the quiet corners of her life. This dog, whom she called Ranger, had carried the weight of his past not as a burden but as a purpose, and in doing so had found a new reason to fight right here, beside her. The protector had changed his post, but his heart remained unchanged, and together they would face whatever came next, bound by trust, loyalty, and an unbreakable bond. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the weight of the room pressed in around her. The investigator's voice was steady, but the story it told shattered the fragile hope she had been clinging to. The baby's mother, a woman brave beyond measure, had escaped a dark, merciless trafficking ring. In her desperate flight for freedom, she had fought fiercely to protect her newborn, but paid the ultimate price with her life. Emily's fingers tightened into fists on her knees, tears welling as she pictured the mother's silent courage. The fragile child in her arms was a symbol of survival amid unspeakable cruelty. Every tremble in her hands spoke of grief, but also of the fierce determination to honor a life lost and a love that endured. The investigator's eyes softened as he revealed what Emily had sensed all along. Ranger had never been just a stray, or a random guardian. From the very beginning, he had stood sentinel beside the mother and child, his fierce loyalty a silent vow to protect them against a world that threatened to tear them apart. Emily looked down at Ranger, the dog resting peacefully at her feet. His quiet strength was more than instinct, was a sacred promise kept through cold nights, shadowed dangers, and endless waiting. Ranger's journey had been one of unwavering devotion, his heroic spirit shining through every moment of uncertainty. Her heart swelling with a mixture of sorrow and hope, Emily gently cradled the fragile baby against her chest. The soft warmth of the child's breath stirred something deep inside her seed of new beginnings amidst the ruins of pain. "I'm going to call you Grace," Emily whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "because you're a gift, a promise that even in the darkest places, hope finds a way." Tears blurred her vision as she kissed the top of the baby's head. Grace was no longer just a survivor. She was family, an emblem of love's resilience that neither time nor tragedy could erase. The room was quiet except for the soft scratch of pen on paper. Emily's hand was steady now, the tremors of earlier replaced by a calm certainty, with a final signature. Ranger was no longer just a companion. He was recognized officially as her emotional support dog, her protector, her anchor. This legal bond was more than paperwork. It was a promise to never part, a recognition of the unique role Ranger played in healing the broken pieces of her world. Together, they had faced darkness, and together they would walk into the light. The sun cast a golden glow as neighbors, friends, and strangers filled the town square. Faces glistened with tears and smiles, united in gratitude. When Ranger was called forward, a hush fell, then broke into thunderous applause. The mayor pinned a shining medal to Ranger's collar, the symbol of a hero not just in title but in heart. The standing ovation echoed through Emily's chest as she watched Ranger, proud and unassuming, soak in the love he had earned through sacrifice and unwavering courage. In that moment, the town didn't just celebrate a dog, they celebrated the unbreakable bond between human and animal, between hope and healing. Inside her once quiet home, joy had taken root. The gentle babble of Grace filled every corner, mingling with the delighted barks and playful growls as Ranger chased iridescent bubbles dancing in the afternoon light. Toys spilled across the floor, a colorful chaos that marked new beginnings and carefree moments. Emily's laughter bubbled up, a sound she hadn't realized she'd missed so much. Here, in this chaotic harmony, the wounds of the past softened beneath the warmth of belonging and love. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the peaceful scene, Emily knelt beside Ranger. Her fingers brushed through his fur, warm and steady beneath her touch. "You saved us both," she whispered, voice trembling with gratitude. "More than just a dog, more than a hero. You gave me back my heart. I hope you know that." Ranger's eyes met hers, full of quiet understanding and fierce devotion. At that moment, no words were needed. Their souls spoke a language of love, resilience, an unbreakable companionship that would carry them through all the days to come. Emily's hand trembled slightly as the pen hovered over the crisp page. She breathed deeply, gathering the swirling thoughts and emotions inside her chest. Each word she wrote was heavy with the weight of loss, yet tender with newfound hope. The quiet scratch of the pen on paper echoed in the still room, marking the beginning of a chapter she never expected to write. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears as memories both painful and healing flooded her mind. This journal was more than ink on paper. It was the fragile bridge between her past grief and the fragile life blossoming beside her now. Her thoughts drifted back to that freezing dawn, the biting cold, the wind howling like a morning song through the empty streets. How fragile she had felt then, a heart worn thin by loss and despair. And yet, in that bleakest moment, love had found her in the form of a steadfast companion. She smiled softly as she penned those words, knowing the truth they held. It was a love unasked for, unwelcome at first, but fierce and unyielding. Ranger had arrived not just as a dog, but as a beacon of warmth, a silent guardian against the chill in her soul. Emily paused, eyes tracing the curves of the letters as she wrote, feeling the depth of what she wanted to say. Ranger was more than fur and bark. He was a living thread woven between two broken worlds. Through his gentle presence, she had rediscovered the capacity to trust again, to hope, to believe in a future she once thought impossible. He had carried her through nights of fear, days shadowed by sorrow, and stood unwavering when the world seemed to crumble. He was her bridge, quiet, steady, unshakable. Her voice faltered inside her, reverent and hushed as the memory of that fragile newborn, the brave mother and loyal Ranger, rose in her mind like a sacred hymn. Three souls forever intertwined by fate's unyielding hand. Each had suffered, fought, and sacrificed in their own way. Yet through pain, their lives had become a testament to resilience and love. Ranger's silent watch had been the thread that held them all together, an unspoken promise that no one would be left behind. Emily's heart ached with gratitude and sorrow in equal measure. The world outside was still, blanketed in snow that hid scars beneath a fragile layer of white. Emily's gaze softened as she remembered the place where the baby's mother had given everything her final breath, a quiet act of love and protection. It was there that Emily's own journey had shifted, where endings became beginnings. The field was no longer just a frozen stretch of earth. It was sacred ground where hope had quietly taken root. Her hand stilled on the page, a silent tribute to the painful beauty of second chances. With a final, gentle stroke of the pen, Emily captured the story's deepest truth, how in the faintest, most fragile moments, the smallest cry of a newborn, the quiet insistence of a loyal dog, the greatest love could emerge. How sometimes the guardians we need most arrive with, for paws and a heart as vast as the sky, And in their quiet companionship, we find the strength to heal, to forgive, and to begin again. She set down the pen, feeling the weight lift just a little, knowing that in this shared story of loss and love, they had all found their second chance.